everyone. My name is Jamie Smith. I will be your host today here on Nurse Deck, and we are interviewing Robin Cogan. Hi there, Robin.
Hi, how are you, Jamie?
I'm good. We were happy to interview you, and we have a question for you to start off with. What made you get into nursing, and can you tell us about your journey?
Yeah, I have kind of a more roundabout journey than I think many nurses. I did not start out being a nurse, wanting to be a nurse, had any interest in nursing at all. I was an artist. And when I went to college, I studied art therapy and psychology. And when I was in my art therapy, really deep into the program, towards the end where we had lots of practicum and full semester of immersed in the modality of art therapy within a hospital, I happened to be on the psychiatric floor of a general hospital. And during my practicum, this would never happen today, I'm pretty sure. There was a group of nursing students that were coming through for their psych rotation, and one of their peers was also at that time an inpatient on the unit. And so I realized from watching their interactions really carefully that while I had lots of information about the psycho-emotional component of what was happening, I didn't understand the physical component of what was happening. So I felt like I needed a more well-rounded understanding of, mind, body, spirit. I just felt like I was missing really important information. And at that time, art therapy practice, you did need a master's for licensure. So I either had to go on to get my master's in art therapy, possibly a master's in social work, but instead I went the opposite direction and got an associate's degree in nursing. So I went really backwards in terms of my educational progression. And I went from a bachelor's to an associate's degree. Anyway, kind of interesting and roundabout. I did complete a master's in counseling, years later, but that's the beginning of my nursing journey. And I did my early part of my nursing career was always in psych, substance use disorder. I mean, that was my passion. It still is. I think that background is an excellent foundation to be a school nurse.
Oh, yeah. So you started off as an artist. You studied art therapy, psychology. You wanted to be more engaged with mind, body, spirit. You could have went on to get your master's as an artist, but you decided to go back, be a nurse, and get your associate's degree. Is that right?
I clearly didn't have a mentor or someone to guide me, but yeah, that's exactly right.
Cool deal. So you have been a nurse for a while. What drives you in this field of nursing, and what makes you stay?
Well, I might have given you a different answer before COVID in terms of what makes me stay. I'm still struggling with that one right now.
Yeah.
As many of us are, right? So
Right.
I have been a nurse for 37 years. I have been a school nurse for 21 of those 37 years. So more than half of my nursing career has been as a school nurse. I am still a full-time school nurse. My association with Rutgers is what I call my summer, fall, winter, spring job. It's not my full-time job. It's my way of giving back to the next generation of school nurses. But my full-time job is as a Camden City school nurse in Camden, New Jersey. And so what makes me stay is you get into a rhythm. I think part of being a school nurse especially is you're in a rhythm with a school, with the district, with the people, with watching kids grow up. Like you're embedded in a school community, and before you know it, honestly, the years flow by. Some of them you would like to forget. Some of them, are unforgettable for really good reasons. But I think that's why I've stayed all these years. COVID changed a lot though. And so I'm still grappling with what my next steps are. I'm here, I'm still, a school nurse in Camden. I just don't know what the next steps for me are going to be.
Yeah. You said 37 years though in nursing and 21 has been at the school. Is that right?
Yeah. And the problem, I mean, I shouldn't say the problem. One of the issues in school nursing is that there really is nowhere to grow. I've had the same job for 21 years. There's
Wow.
no internal structure for any upward mobility. So I've expanded what I say horizontally and not vertically. I've expanded my education. I've expanded my, I write now. I'm a blogger. I publish articles. I speak. I educate. But that's all in addition to my full-time job. In my day-to-day work, there is no capacity because of the structure of being a health care provider in an educational system. They are two very different structures that don't fit well together, unfortunately.
So you've been in the same spot since when you started, and so you educate and you blog and you write. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I love to write. It's a stress reliever for me.
It's when I left my art, that became my sense of creativity.
I get it. Yeah, I write. I'll put like tables and stuff together so things stick. And believe it or not, it's a stress reliever. Like hypertension medicines. I know it might sound silly, but I write it out, and it relieves stress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, as a lecturer and a clinical coordinator at Rutgers Camden School of Nursing, tell us about the academic challenges in nursing education in response to the pandemic.
Whoa, I think we were all taken by surprise. It was a bit of whiplash going on at the beginning. I know that we were not prepared to go full steam ahead into virtual learning, especially in a nursing program where it's so hands-on. Our program is it's based on relationship building and cohorting and communication and having real life experiences with children and families and community. I mean, every part of our program, which is embedded in the community, it's based on population health and understanding your community, had to completely be redesigned in a really short period of time, because our nursing program typically begins in the summer. It begins in the summer. Most school nurses are off for the summer, and so our program, the core of the program, is in the summer. But so COVID started in mid-March, this time 2 years ago. Our program, we weren't ready to pivot and become fully online within it wasn't even like 6 weeks our program was going to start. So between what was happening at my day-to-day job, where we shut down and went fully remote, and then what was happening at Rutgers, I think we were all feeling the growing pains and the learning curve of what it meant to take a very intimate face-to-face encounter, whether it's, pre-K to 12th grade students or it's adult learners, and create as robust a program as you could virtually. So there was a lot of pivoting. There was a big, learning curve. There were a lot of resources that were becoming available to us. But everything seemed very compressed, and in the middle of it too, we were in the midst of not really understanding the impact of this awful virus. And where I am in New Jersey, we were one of the first really hardest hit states. And so it was the most challenging time, but honestly, it got even much more challenging as the pandemic went on. Each phase of this pandemic has had their own difficulties, challenges, opportunities to really meet the moment, because each of these moments requires so much innovation and so much collaboration and admitting when things aren't working well, and then trying to address how to change that. It's not possible there was no more business as usual. The schedule was gone, the rhythm of the school year was gone, whether or not we could see our kids face to face was gone. And even when we did come back, it felt very sanitized. We're masking, where some people are wearing face shields. There's fewer kids in the class. Everything felt it just felt unsafe for a very long time.
Yeah. So I was listening to you, and you said you had to redesign things within 6 weeks. Is that right? So you went from having that hands-on, that relationship, that hands-on type of education to remote learning. So I can only imagine how difficult that must have been. And then you mentioned there was a lot of innovation, I bet, because you literally had, like you said, redesign how to do things.
Yes, yes. And in my district, the district I serve, it's an urban district. So, you can't assume that everyone has devices at home or has internet access. I mean, these things really, what's come to light with COVID are all the things we know, the social determinants of health that we know, the inequities that exist in certain communities. And my community of mostly brown and Black families and children were especially hit by those inequities. And so when most people were able to work from home because of their jobs allowed it, my family members were all of a sudden considered, essential workers because they worked in supermarkets or restaurants or, home care. And so while children may be home, maybe their families weren't home. So everything turned upside down and inside out. And there was a lot of miscommunication. I mean, little things that were big things. Masking was not well explained from the beginning, which is, I think, why we, to this day, 2 years later, we're still fighting masking. The way we explained the need or not the need. We gave them mixed messages from the beginning, and that, from a public health perspective, you have to get it right from the door.
That's right.
It's one thing to pivot and change guidelines based on research or based on evidence, but that particular important protective strategy of masking, it wasn't because we didn't have the evidence. We know masks protect people. What we didn't have were the masks for the hospitals. What we didn't have was PPE for those who were taking care of the sickest patients.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm.
So we actually, one of the things we did early on in COVID, we made masks. It was like, Rosie the Riveter making masks.
Well, that was actually going to be my next question. I was going to ask you what innovation, what interventions did you guys do at the Rutgers Camden School of Nursing to maintain the quality of nursing education?
So regarding nursing education, I mean, we jumped head on into a literal boot camp of how to pivot to online learning. So before the semester started, I was able to take a design course on how to bring my face-to-face program online. It was a great course, but boy, I had to move every single one of my syllabi, all of my projects, all of the assignments, all of my speakers. I had to redesign everything that I've ever done and put it into an online platform. We use something called Canvas. And so what we decided is that because we wanted to create that sense of a cohort, even though it was really hard, we were going to have synchronous and asynchronous class. So we very quickly redesigned everything. The content was still valuable and important, but we had to deliver it in a completely different way. And truthfully, we had to be incredibly flexible with ourselves, with our students, with the university. Nothing, I don't think we felt like we were walking on solid ground for a long time.
I think a lot of people felt that way for sure. Mm-hmm. This online platform, you guys created that?
So Canvas is the platform. We had to create our courses within that platform. We didn't create the online platform. We had to learn how to use it to its utmost. We had to learn which tools and techniques that we had accessible to us. And remember, we were used to having our classes face to face, all of them. So everything we did no longer fit into this world of, virtual life.
And you had to figure this out in 6 weeks?
Pretty much.
Wow.
And still work at my day job.
Yeah.
Its own issues.
Robin, we're curious. What is relentlessness? Tell us more about the Relentless School Nurse, its mission and vision.
Yeah, so about I should know the year it started, shouldn't I? I want to say I think it was it might have been 2017. Let me count on my fingers. 18, 19, 20. Yeah, I think it was 2017. First of all, just understand in nursing, and I'm glad I'm talking to a nurse, because even within nursing, people outside of school nursing often have a very skewed view of what a school nurse is and what a school nurse does, and they don't always understand the full scope of our practice, the full the responsibilities that we undertake, the fact that we work under a 21st century school nursing framework that is evidence-based, that what we do in terms of population health, the care coordination we provide, the mental health services supports we provide, how we are the bridge between home and school, between learning and health. And as we know, a child who is hungry is not going to be a good learner. A child who is not feeling well is not going to be a good learner. We are facing really a generation of children who have extreme needs that many have not seen before. And with COVID, that is even more amplified. Prior to COVID, school nurses spent up to 34% of our time on mental health issues prior to COVID.
Wow.
And a lot of people don't understand that, right? But think about what is happening out in the community, because what happens out of the community inevitably comes into school. So a school is a community, and we reflect the communities that we are around. So that's why, certainly the education piece is incredibly important, but within that are equally important things: the social and emotional state of the child. The culture and climate of a building. Is the building one that children feel a sense of connectivity? They're connected to their teachers. They're connected to the staff in the school. There's so many variables that impact how children relate to school and how staff relate to children. It's definitely a two-way street. So I'm sorry, I got off track with your question.
No, I'm actually super interested in this, and I was going to do a follow-up. I want to make sure I heard you right. You said 34% of what a school nurse deals with is psych-related?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I would have never guessed that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And it's much more with COVID, much, much more. And don't forget, we're also dealing with the adults. So it's very much a holistic practice. It is really based on, the WISC model, the whole school, whole community, whole student model. That was part of a CDC model, but our National Association of School Nurses spent years researching an evidence-based model that was released in 2015 called NASN's Framework for 21st Century School Nursing Practice. And it's based on 5 pillars. It includes public health. It includes certainly standards of care, quality improvement. I mean, so many, there's 5 pillars, and each one has many, many different levels of the responsibilities that fall under each pillar, and surrounded by, centered with the child, the family, the school community. So it is not a retirement job. And one of the reasons I started, this is where I got back to the question. One of the reasons I started the Relentless School Nurse is because I began to understand that people, even nurses, had no clue what it meant to be a school nurse. And I felt like if we don't tell our own stories, other people will make up their stories about what we do. And, along the way, I'm very involved in social media, and I've met some amazing social media superstars who've taught me so much about the importance of being present on social media, telling your story. You know, and nurses have this thing in their DNA. They don't want to boast. They don't want to bring attention to themselves.
Right.
And I always say, you're not boasting, you are educating. You are educating the public about your work, what you do, who you've come across, what impact you've made. You know, it is not helpful to us to stay quiet. And that was never more clear than during COVID. And I have to say, I've done a little study in my own, my kind of non-scholarly study on how nursing headlines have changed dramatically pre-COVID and post-COVID.
It's the truth, yes. Someone else commented on that.
And so I'm happy to see that, because I feel like that means that somewhere out there in the, you know, in the echo chamber, someone is listening, and maybe we are making better connections with media, with journalists, writing op-eds, putting information out there. You know, as nurses, we do a fantastic job talking to each other about our specialty. We know each other. We stay in our own little, you know, our own little circle of comfort. But that doesn't help people understand the bigger role of what nurses do and who we are. So that's called inward facing, right? We need to be more outward facing. So when I say an op-ed, I mean an op-ed in Newsweek. I mean an op-ed in USA Today. And I was able to get things like that into USA Today and Newsweek and CNN. Not because I could do it alone, but because I could collaborate with people in other sectors, whether they're nurses or physicians, you know, from people that I met on social media. We don't have to do these things in a bubble. And those are big examples, but the only difference between when I didn't do it is when I chose to do it. I was the same person when I was afraid to do it. And I did a few trainings on the importance of finding your voice and speaking out. And I thought, what do I have to lose? Either they just say no, or or they say yes. So in between all of that, I started writing my blog, The Relentless School Nurse. And initially I told stories from my health office, but I wanted to tell stories from other school nurses' offices. I felt like if I invited a school nurse to tell a story in their own words, that would encourage them to find their voice. And I have to say, that's one of the things I'm most proud of. All of the guest contributors who have then gone on and done amazing things that I think maybe started because they wrote a blog post in The Relentless School Nurse.
Nice. I want to say, your comment about how nurses tend to keep them themselves, they don't, humbled, you're not like boastful, whatever. I like how you comment about how don't stay quiet, speak about it, educate others, educating them. I respect that a lot. And I think others will benefit from hearing you say that, because it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if people want to learn more, read the blogs on The Relentless School Nurse, how do they get there? What's the website link?
Yeah, the website is relentlessschoolnurse.com.
Relentless School Nurse.
I can put it in the chat if that would help.
Yes, because I think we should put that out there.
That'd be good. I'm also very active on Twitter. One of my favorite places. Here it is. Here's the chat. I can give you an example of a recent blog post. And I do get controversial. Some may call me political, but I also think nursing is pretty political. We have a license to touch people, and I think we need to stay current with what is happening. Let's see. I have so many. I don't know which one to pick. This one was a good one. This one I thought was a good one. The title is Pandemics End Psychologically Before They Do Biologically.
Yeah, I want to check it out. Robin, can you tell us, how do you feel about the current working conditions for nurses, and what do you think would be the best intervention to address it?
I have lots of things to say about the current working conditions for nurses, because first of all, as a boots on the ground school nurse, I've been in this for so long, and especially in COVID. But I've also, over the last almost 20 months, I have held weekly private school nurse support groups on Sunday nights at 7:00.
Wow.
Nurses from across the country, school nurses from across the country have come to talk about their challenges, their upsets, what is, what their week has been like, what is present for them. And the information that they have shared with me is just heart-wrenching. I've been collecting, I keep it anonymous, so I don't collect names, but I do collect themes and quotes. And we have a very beleaguered, very concerned workforce that has truly been in the middle of some quite abusive circumstances. Unfortunately, masking or anything COVID related has become a very political hot potato. There are, factions that don't want to have their child participate, they want parent choice for anything COVID related, but they're forgetting that there are other people's children in their children's school buildings.
Right.
Their child does not go to school alone. They go to school in a community.
Other people.
With other people's children. And we are responsible for caring for those other people's children. So nurses have found themselves in the middle of maybe parents who think we're doing too much, and I can give you some examples of some of the pushback, or even staff and administrators who think we're not doing enough. And it's a really hard place to be. We know that guidelines have changed frequently, but we also know, if you have a public health background, that guidelines change based on science. We hope based on science. Sometimes we're not sure if the science is really accurate. There's been some questions lately about the case counts, but typically we know that our guidelines are based on science. They come from the CDC to our departments of health. Now we can choose to meet what the recommendations are requiring, or we can actually go beyond the recommendations depending on your school community. So for example, in my community, while my state is drop the mask mandate March 7th, my district continues to have universal masking. And one of the several reasons, there's about 4 reasons. Number one, we have a very, very low vaccination rate, less than 10% in most of our schools.
Oh, wow. Less than 10%?
In most of our schools.
Wow.
We have the Pfizer vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds for the Omicron variant has been disappointingly ineffective. I think only 12% effective. And that is a large population of our students, right? So we have about 7,500 students, and we serve from pre-K 3 and 4-year-olds to 12th grade. We actually have kids who are also up to 21 with special needs. We also have, so that's a concern, we also have a population of preschool students because of preschool expansion that aren't even eligible to be vaccinated. And so when you put all of those things together, think about the mitigation strategies that we have in school to keep kids safe. There's really not that many if people aren't vaccinating, right? We're really not able to physically distance the way we could because we have so many kids in classes. We didn't limit the class size when we came back the second time for this school year. Understand, COVID has impacted 3 school years. So if you have a 7th grader this year, their last typical school year was in 4th grade. And think about how much growth and development happens between 4th grade and 7th grade, right? So the challenges we have are enormous. But back to what the school nurses have been telling me, what they have shared from a very heartfelt place are things that, that have been said to them, that they've been accused of. I'm just going to pull up some examples. Hold on one second. I can give you.
For 20 months, you said for 20 months, over a year and a half, you've been doing weekly private meetings with nurses across
Sunday nights from 7 to 8 every Sunday night.
And some have been in abusive circumstances. There's been political issues around masking, and you say that there's been themes and quotes you've kept record of. Is that right? Just to help share with the community and just let them be aware of what's going on?
That's exactly right. And
We're able to pull it up?
I'm sorry, I should have had it pulled up.
Oh, no, it's all right. We can take this part right here off of Nurse Deck.
That's okay. I'm going to find it.
And I will have to jump off here in like 10 more minutes.
Oh, no problem. Well, I can just give you some examples of things that I heard. I wanted to quote directly from the source, and I'm having a hard time pulling up. I have so many, as my kids say, Mom, you have too many tabs open.
So I have an idea. Why don't we edit this part, and I'll comment on the 20 months, and then, the political issues, and you can come back and say, well, let me give you some examples. You want to do that?
Perfect. That sounds great.
So, Robin, you caught our attention. You said for 20 months now, over a year and a half, you've been doing Sunday night weekly private meetings with nurses across the country, and you've kept record of themes and quotes. Some have been about abusive circumstances, political issues around masking, and more. Can you tell us more about that?
Right. So these groups have met on an ongoing basis, nurses from all over the country, just to share in a safe space some of their experiences. And some of the discussions are things like, I'll give you two pretty extreme examples. There was a nurse who sent a child home because the child had COVID-like illness, and the mother was very angry with her. She didn't believe that she had COVID. And when she returned the child to school, now this is an extreme case, when she returned the child to school, she returned the child in a t-shirt. This was a first or second grader. The t-shirt was one of those ones you had to make up that was like, somewhat like, not quite graffiti, but that kind of fancy stuff. And it said in fancy letters, my school nurse has poop blank. It was a poop emoji, right? A big poop emoji in the middle of her shirt for brains. So my school nurse has blank for brains. And on the back of the shirt, it said, I don't have COVID.
Wow. I don't even know what to say. Like, really? Come on.
And how do you, as a school nurse, number one, continue to treat this child, which she did, deal with the family? This is an example of the unbelievable disrespect. And the truth is that our kids are watching how we talk to each other. It's almost like road rage has been allowed to leave the car and just show up everywhere. That's what it feels like.
Very disrespectful. Wow.
Yeah. I had another school nurse tell me that this was really upsetting. She was sending a child home, and I think she was talking to a parent. The parent got irate, and threatened her and said, get ready to meet your maker.
All for doing her job. Get ready to meet your maker.
For doing her job. For caring about other people's children. Because that is our responsibility.
Right. Wow.
Here's some, okay. So I wrote a blog post called The Great Resignation. I'll put it in the chat. So this one is about parents, blaming school nurses, and to ask them to stop blaming them, stop verbally abusing them, stop humiliating them and intimidating them. A nurse said, this is not what I signed up for, is a popular refrain that I hear over and over again from colleagues across the country. We continue to press on. School nurses have been tolerating the most intolerable conditions, only hoping that things will improve, but they don't. School nurses have written letters of resignation. Some have submitted them. Some are still holding on to them, like waiting for the next hostile conversation as the final straw. One school nurse said that night, and it really hit me. She said that she was spilling over from stressors. She was spilling over.
Spilling over from stressors. What was she trying to imply?
Like what? It felt so much stress was coursing through her body that it was just enveloping her. It was everywhere she looked and felt. And that visual stayed with me, because what does it mean to spill over? And I thought about her description and the feeling that she could no longer contain herself, and that the calm parts of herself were no longer accessible. And it made me realize, we have been living and working on such high alert, spending our days in states of hypervigilance. It's a different kind of alert than a normal, typical school nursing day, because it's intensified from 24 months of difficult conversations, whiplash-inducing mitigation strategies, and the politicization of public health, right?
Right.
So, I wrote about, can we save our school nursing workforce? And some of the quotes here, I think, are very revealing. One nurse said, "I've been a nurse for 24 years, and I've never felt more demoralized, questioned, or made to feel incompetent."
It hurts to hear that. I don't even know what to say. That's awful.
I feel put in the middle of everything between parents, administration, teachers, and pediatricians. Another one said, "I am done with people fitting the guidelines for their own narrative. I have been a nurse for 17 years, and it may be my last." A couple more. Another nurse said, "Worry is the word of this pandemic. Why do I have to prove myself to the administrator?" And then another one said, this got me, "This is a bittersweet day. I resigned from my school nurse position. This year took its toll on me, and I am feeling lost." And from that really intense conversation and all the others that happened before, I began to put together some crowdsourced solutions. Like, what do we really need? How can we move beyond this place of intolerable working conditions and regain some equilibrium? In this moment, we have a bit of a pause, and it gives us time to say, we can't do that again. What can we do next time this rears its ugly head again? Because we know it's coming, right?
Robin, what are some changes you would like to see in healthcare after the pandemic?
So I think this is the time and the space to take it, to have a real deep understanding of what we want to do and what we need it to look like, because it cannot continue along the path that it's been, right?
Agreed.
We have had too many people leave. We've had too much hurt and uncertainty. And I do believe that school nurses, I'm hoping, have reached a place of a resolve that they will not allow themselves to be abused, disrespected, demeaned. We are highly trained healthcare professionals. The fact that we work within an educational system should be a benefit to that educational system. But sometimes we were made to step back from this public health role, that we have the skills and the knowledge base and the experience to deliver. So it has been very, very challenging. I have some thoughts about what could happen moving forward. One is that we need to work as a health services team with staffing that meets the enormity of the challenge. School nurses cannot work in isolation anymore because that was never sustainable. That was the Band-Aid. We need a robust school health services team, not one person. Also moving forward, we cannot be the de facto health department. Our health departments across this country are woefully underfunded, understaffed, and clearly had difficulty meeting the challenge of the contact tracing, pushing out the vaccination clinics, dealing with all of the logistics that went into, once they became available, testing and PCR testing or rapid testing. They didn't have the wherewithal to manage all that, and nobody really could. Again, it has to be a team. These are groups that have to get out of their own bubbles and start working together. There needs to be a team of contact tracers embedded in school districts and buildings. School nurses are not the only staff members that can perform contact tracing. In fact, it's such an overwhelming and time-consuming job that it takes away from the very essence of our real job, which is caring for children.
Right.
And that was an additional stressor. Are we missing something because we're so focused on contact tracing? Am I missing what's standing right in front of me, right? That's a school nurse's worst nightmare, that they've missed something very important. And then districts need to partner with vendors to implement testing for staff and students, to stop adding layer after layer of expectations on the shoulders of truly an already beleaguered workforce with no support to share the load. And then support your staff. Do not allow or excuse abusive behavior or language directed towards school nurses who are merely attempting to implement the public health mitigation strategies that keep students and staff safe.
Yeah, I like all these changes you recommend. You kept saying team, contact tracing. You mentioned robust health services team, not just one person, partnering with vendors, supporting your staff. These are all great things.
Mm-hmm. And then, just the way school nurses are supervised. School nurses need to be supervised by other school nurse administrators, school nurse leaders. We need leadership that has an intimate understanding of the full scope of our practice. So create health services departments at the district level, because that would also give opportunities for school nurses like me to have upward mobility and grow our leadership skills, hone them, share them. I had to go outside of my school district to gain leadership skills. And in my own district, I don't have an official way to share them. I do it kind of, covertly, I guess you could say. And then saying thank you. That is a loss.
It is.
Thank you. Thank you. It goes a long way to give us fuel to keep going. Truthfully, we don't need a lot. We need to be supported, but darn it, say thank you.
Seriously.
Right?
Yeah. Show appreciation.
Show appreciation. Recognize and include school nurses in school activities and celebrations. I can't tell you how many school nurses tell me that there was a big celebration about what was happening with COVID, and they never invited the school nurse because they see her as so separate from the school community. Now, what does that say about that building? That's a culture and climate issue in that building. There were school districts, because of the ESSER funds, that gave bonuses around COVID. Now, they want lots of money, but they didn't give them to school nurses in all cases, or they gave them half.
Goes back to your comment about needing to be a team. Nurses, should be a part of that.
And then just two more. Value our educational preparation. our leadership skills, our consensus building. We are a trusted member of the school community. So include school nurses on committees, but then give us uninterrupted release time to participate. We can't be 3 places at once, which means there should be more than one school nurse in a building. Either we're, the daily urgent care for everything under the sun, or we're part of a bigger picture of also helping schools identify processes and practices to keep schools safe, right? Whether it's health and safety in the building, whether it's how we manage emergencies that happen in a building. There's so many components to this. And then finally, as we know, this is a huge problem, pay a wage commensurate with our professional expertise and education. Create a salary scale that recognizes our work experience prior to entering school nursing. They plop us on the educational salary guide. But if you're a school nurse with decades of experience, if you're a nurse with decades of experience, but you've never been in a school system, they will insist that you start at step 1 with a brand new teacher who has no experience. And then you wonder why school nurses leave.
Right.
So they're trying to fit us into their educational kind of lexicon and structures and how they process certifications for educators, but we fall under a different category. And so it makes it hard for them to really understand. It's really not that difficult. We just haven't had the necessary conversations to make it happen.
Well, thank you today, Robin, for your time and for your interview. Thank you so very much. Are you on Nurse Tech Social?
Say that again?
Are you on Nurse Tech Social?
I just joined it last night.
Well, I would love to continue the conversation on there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.